Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Be More podcast, where we inspire you to be more of every role within the Salesforce, MuleSoft, Slack, and Tableau ecosystems. Before we jump in for today, going to introduce our topic. Today, we are exploring what it means to be more product designer, and I'm joined today by Philip. So, if you could kick things off for us by describing kind of what it means to be a product designer and also introducing yourself for our audience, please.
Yeah. Uh, Thanks for having me, Tom, and thank you for inviting me onto the Be More podcast. Really thrilled to be here. That was the first thing I wanted to say. Been listening to some episodes, and it's really good stuff. I think a lot of people get a lot out of it. But as for myself, as you mentioned, I'm a product designer. I've been doing this in the software industry for over 10 years now, mostly in enterprise software. The last 5 years, I've been doing it on Salesforce Commerce Cloud. And I guess a little bit more about myself is that I haven't had a straightforward career path. So this could be good for the career changers out there. But I
Hmm.
actually, I actually started out as a California attorney, and then I changed careers during the financial crisis. And I guess during that period, it was kind of hard for a lot of folks, including myself. And I didn't really have like a very deep network in law, and I just sort of graduated and passed the bar at that point. Um, so I had to make a decision, and I, decided that on a day-to-day basis, I really liked to make things, not so much read like statutes and contracts, right? Because growing up, I did like to draw. I played with like Photoshop elements and actually did some cartoons or comic strips for the Daily Cal, which is a college newspaper. Um, and yeah, I figured if I enjoyed doing that at a task level, this is something I could do on a day-to-day basis, whether or not I was going to get paid. And so I try to, put my energies into more, I guess, creative pursuits. I try to do a garage band like startup with some friends, but I, despite what you may read, doing startups are very, very hard, right? And we had no real great experience doing that, and so uh, that that failed. But it was good because it introduced me to tech and design, and so from there, like I said, oh, I could have a career path in like design. So I took classes and I volunteered. I even did a design boot camp uh, before landing my first job as a user experience designer. And then since then, there was a phase where I did contracting just to broaden my skill set, and eventually contracted for Salesforce. And here I am today. I converted to full time.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's really great to hear. And you obviously got quite a varied background. And what I like about your background, like in particular, is it's a very unconventional path, if I must say, like into technology and certainly into Salesforce. So I think it ultimately proves that you can do it and you can do it from many different backgrounds. I guess it doesn't matter as much where you're coming from. It probably matters more where you are aiming to get to. Do you agree with that, or what do you think of that?
Uh, yeah, uh, I agree with that, Tom. I think that it's still very hard though, and I think we'll get to that more. I think later
Mm.
on in the conversation. But yeah, definitely, it's you know life is long, and with your career path, you should always be working towards like a future goal. I think that's definitely more helpful than um, just dwelling on what you've done. Yeah.
Mm. Okay, awesome. So thinking about this now and kind of diving into the the role a little bit more, if you were to kind of describe that role and potentially how it interacted with other roles, what kind of description do you think you would come up with? Like, if somebody came up to you almost in the street and said, okay, but what is a product designer? Like, how would you describe that to them?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I know you kind of asked that in the beginning. I didn't
Yeah.
quite get to, but it was good to like I guess sort of pause and talk about reflect on some of the other uh, like comments that we've made.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, the with a product designer, I think wow, like there's I think one thing that we have to think of is with a lot of disciplines, right? I think you're going to have a certain like a set of philosophies or assumptions or really goals. I think that drive it, and that really like differentiates like different fields and like disciplines, right? And
Hmm.
otherwise, aside from those things, we're just people doing work to be fair, right? And so I think with product design, what sort of distinguishes it is that it has this user centered like philosophy behind it, right? Basically, that when you're creating products, that you should be accommodating users' needs, capabilities, and behaviors first. I think that's a sort of philosophy that's been, I think, popularized and driven by like Don Norman. And so as a result of that, you're going to take that and you kind of apply it into whatever it is you're trying to do. What happens is that product design, um, to sort of like clarify, is there there is in a more traditional sense product design which is closer to industrial design, right? So that's just the designing of like physical goods at a mass like scale. I think that's probably the small nuance between product design and industrial design. Otherwise, they're fairly synonymous. But then I think there's product design that's kind of as a result of coming from the tech world, which is from user experience design, right? And
Hmm.
I think that sort of that terminology is probably closer to the philosophy that I was like just mentioning. And so what happens is you're taking this philosophy and since it's in the tech world, you're sort of like driving that within in my context creating like software, right? And then so what does it sort of like take to do that? I can talk a little bit more about like the general uh, like product like development cycle, and actually that's sort of where the product part comes. If you're ever wondering maybe how user experience design became like product design, I may be not authority on this because I'm just a practitioner, right? But yeah, I didn't even coin the terms. But what it would seem like is if you have user experience designers, um, and then you sort of embedded them into the product development cycle, which is very much to do with how you deliver software, and then that becomes sort of uh, like your way your like sort of your job. You get incorporated into that, then you might call yourself like a product designer. And so what's typical then is that you might hear how like descriptions of product design being kind of similar to like the agile process. So first you'll have like this problem and planning and defining phase where you might get these product requirements from a product manager. And those sort of like lay out business goals and on a high level how like a feature might work, right? At Salesforce, what's unique too is that uh, the product requirements also include like jobs to be done for the customer, and this is really important because at Salesforce we focus on customer success and trust. So we've always have like I feel like I'm like doing Salesforce marketing, but it's like
Yeah.
it's not. It's like kind of true, right? Is we were kind of putting the customer first. It's kind of built into even my day to day like um, assignments that I get, right? And so you kind of start there, and then you kind of see how the user-centered like philosophy is like coming through. Um, and then what you might do then is continue to do some like initial research to understand the requirements more. But it's also a way to like understand the users more during this like initial research phase, right? So typically, what uh, product designers will work with are like personas. Sometimes you have to create your own, but that's not. Uh, I would say you don't do that like on every single project. Usually, it comes in cycles. Yeah, and then
Okay.
yeah, and so in those situations, right? Personas are these like research backed characters or archetypes that represent like a group of users. And so you could use that for reference. And so that's another way of like preparing yourself for doing like this design work. And then eventually, we get into like this build and testing phase, which is probably closer to what you think of when you think of design, which is um, like you're more in line with like building things or making things, right? Um, and I think even then, I think what's sort of like unique about design, I had a conversation about this with my friends, is that uh, like design in many ways is like if you just want to put it in a plain like layman sense, it's not much different than foresight, really. The idea that you could sort of think ahead of what you should do and then sort of um, guide other decision making based off of that, especially in product design. um, I think that's a big part of it, is seeing it as a form of like foresight. So that's why when you get in this build and testing phase, there's a lot of like prototyping that happens, and this prototyping of software can be done through sketches, all the way to like building throwaway like front end like applications. And then there's also a bit of like validation involved there, right? Where you can do self evaluation with like heuristics or best practices, design systems, and accessibility guidelines. But there's also layers of like qualitative, like user testing. uh, at Salesforce, we're fortunate enough to subscribe to usertesting.com. I don't know, should we be like listing company names, or if so,
That's fine.
um, yeah, it should be fine. But yeah, we subscribe to that service, so it's very helpful for us to like uh, actually get in touch with like users and get their feedback. So that's a big part of product design, is not just that you're using tools like Photoshop, or in our case Figma. It's a big like equivalent of a design editor for
Yeah.
our discipline. Um, it's using that to help visualize, to understand what you're supposed to do, the foresight, and then you have like this like validation to sort of confirm the foresight and continue to build on it, right? Um, and I think depending on context, there's also different layers of like design reviews. I think the most basic like level of doing that is simply presenting your designs to your immediate stakeholders, like in the smallest. Like I've worked at very small startups, and so you could directly get feedback from the founder or the CEO, right? And
Yeah.
then you iterate. But in a company like Salesforce, you'll have actually multiple layers where you're kind of doing these reviews for your immediate like teammates, like other designers, and then maybe a higher level review with product management and engineers, and then maybe even a more formal one. We have something called a product design review, where you kind of do a more formal presentation against like product managers, engineers, maybe even like success architects and other folks. So that one can be kind of intimidating, but much needed. I think I talked a lot here, and I didn't even get to the part where we get into the different roles we interact with. So I wanted to pause just
Mm.
for a second. Um,
Yeah. I think that's a good place to kind of pause there for a second. Yeah, I think that was super helpful, and I think hopefully valuable for our audience. We've got a couple of people watching us live, which is always great to see. I
mhm.
think what I was thinking about as you were talking about that, like if people don't understand personas, I know kind of way back when now, it's a couple of years ago, there was a trailhead badge, and I think it still exists now, which describes personas. And I think there's another one that describes user stories and the job to be done, because I think that's really important for any designer. But I think also what I'm taking away from this is like being a designer in inverted commas, right? If you bear with me for this thought, but it applies to many other roles within the ecosystem as well. Like admins could be doing a form of it, architects, developers, consultants, they're all essentially designing something,
Mhm.
or a system. So I think that's definitely one way for our audience to relate if they're not a specific kind of full time designer. But I think from a timing point of view for today's episode, we'll kind of skip ahead a little bit and go straight into tips, advice you would give to those looking to start out in kind of a product design role. Are there any kind of key points or highlights you wanted to suggest?
Yeah. So there's some common advice that I feel like I should always throw it out there. One is to have a great portfolio, because sometimes people always wonder like, oh, there's these experience requirements, or like, do I need like this high level of education in order to get into design? And I think some common advice is having a great portfolio is uh, it's definitely very valuable, to stack up against other things that you might have. Um, Also, there's like, don't jump into digital like tools. Take your time to actually understand. Feel free to use pencil and paper to clarify your thoughts. Of course, focus on the user, and then like having like a breadth of experience, as well as an area that you specialize in. But I think that's just like common advice, generally helpful. Uh, but I have like more personal thoughts, and I know this podcast is really about more like personal thoughts. So it's great that you kind of get into this, because it's probably nowhere else you're going to get this sort of material, right? Is I
Yeah.
think maybe one of the most important things for a career and as like an individual is finding people that you admire and looking for opportunities to do your best work for them, right?
Mm.
Yeah, I think the reason why I say that is that there's so many things that you can like chase in a career. Like maybe you want really good projects, or you want to like, I don't know, like there's a company that you just like the brand of, I guess. I think a lot of people like to work at like the FANG companies, for example. But I don't know, there's never any guarantee that you're going to be happy in what you do and be successful, to be honest with you. And there's no way to know, right? The only way to know is to actually do it. um, And so I think I feel like a good North Star is, finding those people that you like, because you kind of already know there's some sort of goodness that you could get out of that, right? And then building your career off of that. Um, Another bit of advice, I guess, is to learn from people in similar circumstances. Uh, I mean, it's you can learn from like anybody. I think that's pretty key, right? And to be open minded like that. But eventually you kind of understand that you can only be yourself, and you're constrained to what you can do. And so it's good to find people that are in similar situations, because I think what they have to say tends to be more relevant. I think it's just how it
Mhm.
is. Um, and I would like prioritize your your goals over like other goals. And I don't mean that in a like selfish way, right? Like I think if your manager or your friends and your family are saying, oh, you should strive for something, or I think you'd be good at that, I don't think you need to discount that, right? I think that is very valuable. But I think ultimately, like, you have to like live your own life, and no one else can. And so being able to hit those goals, like, yeah, people are going to forget that you achieved anything, so at least you should have those good memories of what you've done. And that continues to be yeah. And that's what I think a meaningful life is too, to be honest. It's not an actual life to do all these random things, right? Because that was the hot thing. you put it together, and that's not a whole cohesive life, right? Whole cohesive life is you yourself living each moment to the way that you would like to live it. And to be not fully selfish, I think uh you should be good to people. I think that's very important. I think good things like come from that, but I think it's also important because like it's good on some practical levels too, to just try to be good to people, because you have to work with people all the time, right? And I think the point of good product design especially is that you're making these products for people, and if you don't sort of respect them, I don't know how that's supposed to work. And lastly, I know I talked a lot here, is enjoy the work, like be happy. I think, as you heard, like that's kind of why I went this route, was at least I could find a way to be happy every single day, um, being able to do tasks that I just like. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's really sound, solid advice there. Ultimately, what I take away from that is like it's you as a person who's on this journey. So even though uh, you may be doing it for reasons that kind of seem maybe a little bit selfish, um, it's actually ultimately you that sees the benefit of your own work and of achieving your own goals and objectives.
Mhm.
So other people will be there along the way, and it certainly, I think, makes sense to have like a mentor or somebody to look up to and um, go to for advice or guidance or things like that. But ultimately, it's about getting enjoyment as you're doing that and kind of progressing on that path as you develop yourself, because ultimately, hopefully, we are all learning each and every day. And if you stop learning, then I think that's a slightly different conversation and maybe a whole different episode entirely. But maybe kind of picking up the pace for us now slightly, thinking about your own journey, is there anything you would change or do differently on your journey to product designer?
Yeah. So I would definitely like put weight on learning about your team and uh and its like needs. Like if you were
Hmm.
uh and I mean that goes back to what I was saying about it's hard to chase projects and companies and things of that nature, because you really don't know what you're getting yourself into. So it's pretty important to sort of like learn about like what you could get yourself into. And once you are in a like job too, like every team and company is going to be different, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, right. And so how you do good work for them is going to mean different things. So you kind of have to learn that. So I think it's very important to take that time to like listen to people. And I guess one of the like maybe sort of cookie cutter practices that has some weight to it is, yeah, have conversations with folks when you first start. Like I think even at Salesforce, they sort of recommend that. Like, yeah, go have some conversations with people. So I think there's something to that. It's not purely social. I think a lot of it is I should know what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think another thing would be if you know I would put weight on solo design opportunities. And I'm actually a huge like team player, and I love working with other designers. And actually, that's maybe that was a like a blind area for me, because when I first started, I kind of said, okay, I don't want to do these solo designer like roles and go straight to apply for places that had like teams that I could like learn from and had like resources and things like that. Which there's definitely a lot of truth to that. But I actually, thinking back, especially early on in your career, those solo design like opportunities are can be quite valuable, because I think at that stage you may not be very confident in everything, right? And so you don't need to be worrying about a lot of other things, like what the team dynamics is like. Like you shouldn't be worrying about uh, like things that you can't control. And so as a solo designer, you have more, I think, stake in your own work. You're more opportunity to like communicate with like other stakeholders, and you can sort of like get more comfortable that way, even if the responsibilities I think can be higher, and also you may not have as many resources, but I think getting those like the opportunity to be free is a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like there was a lot to take in there, but like the opportunity to be free and ultimately perhaps push yourself out of your own comfort zone. I think that is important, especially when you're talking about like solo versus teamwork. I
Hmm.
think what we're touching on here is great because, again, these skills are applicable to many roles within the ecosystem. And that's why I really love having these little chats with different people because I'm learning that some of these kind of common traits, like kind of emotional intelligence and how to communicate with people and how to work as a team, but at the same time, sometimes work independently. Like those things are super important and I think set you up for success here. So, thinking about things now, and we are going to kind of fast forward a wee bit,
Hmm.
but is there anything you'd like to change or make people more aware of about the role of product designer?
Um, yeah, yeah. I think definitely going the route that I went through, like this is, what I want to say is, so I'm not sure it's a role that just anyone could get into, and I don't want to be sound so pessimistic about it, but I want to talk more about the realities of it and prepare people. I think that's the thing is I want to see other people succeed, right? And so what I mean by that is, well, you don't see product design really being taught in like public school curriculums, right? So I didn't even learn that it existed until much like later in life, right? Until you get into the working world. Um, if you were to ask my like childhood self, like, what do you think is out there? And you'd probably, and then if you only went to school, you'd probably say, oh, I guess there's, lines of work in like English, math, and like science, and you're, and a second language or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And then maybe an art class, right? Maybe.
Mhm.
Um, so you would know about it. So it's not taught in schools. And I think we all know like the equipment and the software can be really expensive, right? And then like the application process itself, like even going through law, like I'm not sure if there's any other careers that have to go through such a journey just to apply for a job, right? So in addition to having traditional application materials like a resume and cover letter, you have to produce content for a portfolio, right? As mentioned, that's like one of the biggest assets to a design career. But not only do you have to produce a content, but in product design, especially in this digital case, you have to build and manage a website for your content, right? Like my wife is an accountant. I don't think she's ever built a website in her life and needed to apply for a job. And then on top of that, right, you have to go through multiple rounds of interviews, and they're not just like talking to people. You have these take home challenges, like take home work to do, and then there's in home or in person work to do, like you have in person design challenges, and on top of that, there's probably a formal presentation at some point. And that's all to maybe get a job, right? And that can be a full time job in itself. So all I can say is, like for me, if it's reflective of anything, like you definitely need like a helping hand. Um, and like that's why when I was providing some advice, like earlier on, you could hear me say like look towards like other people. Like you should find people you admire and people that you can relate with, because you'll need that helping hand. And for me, I had some great friends, but especially I was very fortunate to have a very loving wife who could support me through like a career change because she had a steady job. But I'll be very honest with you, like even now, I'm not like entirely sure like how long I could do this for. Right? Especially with AI, maybe everybody's asking that question. And then like if there was anything else, like in terms of like that was about awareness, but there's something I could change is somehow I wish getting going through any career could be like easier. Like I feel like in general, over everybody probably goes through this. I think it's like unnecessarily difficult, right? And I think if at the end of the day, what we want is just to do good work and do good work for people, then we should just empower people to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Okay, awesome. I love that. I love how we went on a little bit of a journey there, but I think that's important because that has shaped you into the professional that you are today, and you have lived through those experiences and learned those things, and perhaps rightly or wrongly gone through an interview process that was quite full on and almost like a little job in itself. So totally appreciate you sharing that with us. Unfortunately, we are at time for today, but before we do go, what's a way for people to connect with you? Kind of talking about online, what's the best way for people to connect with you if they would like to learn more?
yeah. The best way to connect with me would be on LinkedIn. I guess you could search for me. I guess my name is Philip Pan, Philip Pan. I know there's a couple out there, but I think there's only so many that are product designers.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, thanks again for your time today, and hopefully, we will inspire some people to be more product designer. So, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Really appreciated this.